In this video, we're going to talk about converting measurements. So the essential question for this video is, how do we use ratios to convert measurements? The tool that we've been using, ratio tables, for the last couple weeks will actually help us when we want to convert between units of measurement. For example, when we weigh things, sometimes we weigh them in ounces and sometimes we weigh them in pounds, and it's good to be able to know how to go back and forth between the two. With ounces and pounds, the relationship is that 1 pound is the same weight as 16 ounces. So if we want to figure out how many pounds are equivalent to 52 ounces, we're looking for equivalent ratios, which is what we've been doing for quite some time. So I could say, well, I know 16 ounces is the same as 1 pound. And if I have twice as many ounces, I would have twice as many pounds. Or if I had 3 times as many pounds, I'd have 3 times as many ounces. So that would be an equivalent ratio as well. Now I'm trying to get to 52 and I am not quite there. But I notice that if I divide 16 by 4, I'll get 4 right here. And of course, then I would need to divide my 1 by 4 as well to get 1/4. And then I can say, oh, these two together make 52, so I'm going to put these two together to get my equivalent 3 1/4, which is helpful for me because I can visualize pounds a little bit more easily than I can visualize ounces. So if somebody's talking about 52 ounces, in my mind, I might think, oh, that's 3 1/4 pounds. That makes sense to me. And because I always like to show options, right, I want to remind you that double number lines can also help us convert between units of measurement. Sometimes when I'm doing a running race or I'm thinking about traveling in a different country, I have to put my mind in kilometers instead of what we use here, which is miles. So we're going to look at how we could convert kilometers to miles with this double number line. And to start, we need to know how they measure up against each other. So 1 kilometer is about the same distance as 6/10 of a mile. If I'm looking at a distance and it tells me that it is 9 kilometers away, and I want to put that in a reference that I use more often, which is miles, I would need to convert my kilometers into miles. In my double number line, I can make my kilometers go up one at a time all the way up to 9, just increasing by 1, right? Adding an extra kilometer every time. And if I do that for my miles, I would have to add an extra 6/10. So I'd have to add that on and so on. For every 1 kilometer on my double number line, there is 6/10 of a mile on the other side. And at the end, I find out that the 9 kilometers would be equivalent to 5.4 miles. That can help me have a frame of reference in a measurement that I use frequently. When I hear someone say 9 kilometers, I can think, oh, that's a little over or a little under 5.5 miles. There's one more strategy to talk about, and that is something that we can talk about as conversion factors and unit cancellation, and that can help us convert between measurements as well. For example, we'll just start basic, and we'll say how many feet are in 5 yards. And to be able to solve that, I need to know that there are 3 feet in every yard. And this is something we hear a lot of, right? We measure distances oftentimes in feet. Something is a few feet ahead of us, or how many yards ahead we'll also hear. So we need to be familiar with both of these units of measurement and how they relate to one another. Now to do our unit cancellation process, I'm going to start with what I know, and that is that I have 5 yards. And then I'm going to write the ratio of feet to yard in fraction ratio form. So I have 3 feet for every 1 yard. And I'm going to put 3 feet here as my numerator and 1 yard as my denominator. And I've chosen that on purpose so that this yard and this yard are opposite one another. And what happens if I do this as a sort of a multiplication problem, these two cancel out, right? So I end up with 5 times 3 is 15, and that has feet here. And 1 by itself is on the bottom with no unit of measurement. That means my answer is 15 feet. So if you picture someone running 5 yards on a football field, that would be the same as running 15 feet. And where you'll see this process of using this unit cancellation a lot is when you have multi-step conversions. So instead of saying how many feet are in 5 yards, imagine I had said how many inches are in 5 yards. And this time I need to know not only that there are 3 feet in 1 yard, but also that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. But after that, I'm going to start it the same way. I'll start by starting with what I know, which is the 5 yards. And I know that 5 yards is equivalent to 3 feet. So I'll put my 3 feet ratio for 1 yard together. And then additionally, I know that 12 inches are equal to 1 foot. So again, I'm going to put my 12 inches here on top and my 1 foot on the bottom so that these are diagonally across from each other, feet and foot. And then I'm going to start canceling these out as if I'm simplifying before I multiply a fraction. So I can cancel my yards out and I can cancel my feet out. And from there, I can multiply. 3 times 5 is 15, as we know from before. And then 15 times 12 equals 180. And the only unit left on top was inches. On the bottom, I have 1 times 1, which is 1, and there were no units left. So my answer is 180. So if that football player is running 5 yards and you want to imagine how many little inches they're taking in their run, it would be 180 inches. The last example we will do together will be with a liquid measurement. So pints, gallons, volume. So pints of ice cream, pints of milk, gallons of milk. And I know that 1 gallon is equivalent to 4 quarts. And then that 1 quart is equivalent to 2 pints. So I'm going to try this with that factor method. I start by knowing that there are 36 pints. And I want to figure out how I can convert. So I'm going to use the part of my information here that discusses pints. And I know that 2 pints, I'm going to put that on the bottom, so they're opposite numerator and denominator, is equivalent to 1 quart. And then I know that 4 quarts, notice I'm putting that as a denominator across from the numerator, 4 quarts is equivalent to 1 gallon, which is ultimately what I'm trying to get to. So I can go ahead and cancel out pints with pints, and I'll cancel out quarts with quarts, and then I'll do my multiplication. And I have 36 times 1 equals 36, and that still has gallons on top. And on the bottom I have 2 times 4, which is 8, and there's no unit of measurement there. And of course, if I do 36 divided by 8, I would find that I would get 4 1/2. So if I'm picturing 36 pints of ice cream at the grocery store, that would be the same as 4 1/2 of those large gallon tubs of ice cream. To practice, go ahead and just calculate how many minutes there are in 3 days. And you can do it with that converting setup if that works best for you. And remember, the essential question was, how do we use ratios to convert measurements? And this is a very real life application of math. So we're definitely going to be practicing this more together.